Hello. Okay, so we have the single party state summary, and we have propaganda, women, minorities, and religious policies. So for the Soviet Union, communist propaganda was based on Marxism-Leninism ideology to promote the Communist Party line. And so they had this censorship body called Glavlit, or however you're supposed to pronounce that. And it basically just they censored everything, and they made sure everything was promoting communism and not anything against it. And if you were found doing anything against the official propaganda, you could be punished by execution or labor camps. Not very good. And the propaganda that was directed toward youth was intended to indoctrinate them into a new collective way of life. So very intense there.
Okay, so looking at the women, so their roles changed a lot in the Soviet Union. So, um, they went back to traditional roles, even though the Bolsheviks they wanted women to gain independence from those traditional roles. But under Stalin's regime, um, they weren't actually treated equally under the new laws. And so many of the rights that they had gained, such as suffrage, abortions, and birth control, they actually lost because Stalin emphasized women's roles in home, and that's because he wanted them to produce more children. However, they also went to work as well because he wanted to increase the labor force. And so, looking at minorities, so racism existed in the Soviet Union. So it existed in social discrimination and also in ethnic cleansing. So there were policies for population transfers. And so, before, during, and after World War II, Stalin did a series of deportations on many ethnic groups, and it was estimated that nearly 3.3 million were deported between 1941 and 1949.
Okay, so religious policies in the Soviet Union basically don't have a religion, but the communist aims were to eliminate the power of religious institutions and to replace Orthodox religion with atheism. And so they really promoted science, and they said that in their different writings and propaganda as a combatant of religion, and supported atheism. And then it got really extreme with Marxist-Leninist atheism as they began to advocate for the control, suppression, and elimination of religion. So within about a year of the revolution, the state got rid of all the church property, and they would use it for different things. And in the period between 1922 and 1926, 28 Russian Orthodox bishops and more than 1,200 priests were killed, and many more were prosecuted. So in the very beginning of the revolution, if you still practice religion, you could practice it in private, but as communism rose and became the main thing, it was persecution until nobody knew that you were anything other than an atheist.
So our next single party state is Germany. And for propaganda, Hitler had this guy, his name was Goebbels and something like that. So he was a minister of propaganda and public information, and what he did was he created many campaigns against Jews, and his campaigns used simple slogans and repeated images which helped Hitler to gain support. Nazis used propaganda in newsletters, leaflets, and poster campaigns. Large political military rallies with banners and marching bands were the greatest way to build support for Hitler. For women, Nazi ideology promoted the role of women as mother and home builder. Women were expected to leave their job after getting married. Women were awarded medals for the more children they had. And for minorities, Hitler wanted to make a racially pure Germany. This made many groups of people undesirable, including Jews, Roma, Black Germans, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, and the mentally and physically handicapped. And lastly, for religious ideologies, Nazi Germany introduced the Reich Church because Hitler rejected Christianity, and religion became the property of the government.
So for China, with propaganda, a lot of it had to do with censorship and this idea that Mao was like the ideal person. So I'm sure a lot of you guys know everyone had to have like a picture of Mao in their house, and this was part of their idea that there needed to be role models for like the basically for all of China to follow. So that way they would give someone like a model to look up to, and that sort of helped create this idea of thought control. And one of the main aspects of thought control was incarceration. If you were like a rebel and you didn't want to follow these techniques, so you'd be sent to these thought reform camps, and then they would eventually just break you down and make you believe what everyone else thought. So, as far as women go in China, with Mao, their rights were actually pretty decent at the time for 1950s. He believed that the oppression of women was a part of like the feudal patriarchy. So the main thing that he stated was that in order for China to be truly communist, women and men need to be equal. So they needed women to be productive and receive equal pay for equal work in production. So a lot of it had to do with the idea that, as I said earlier, that communism can really only be with equality. So, and that can't happen if women are not equal with men. So, really, Mao's goal was for communism to be a thing, not for equal rights. And the statistic that probably surprised me the most was that women in China, their living standard had approached closer to those of Europe and other rich capitalist nations, which at the time China was a third world country. So that was really shocking to me, especially all the things that we know about Mao China. And as far as minorities go, the Chinese Communist Party basically gave the minorities little rights because they thought they could help dictate their decisions better for them because they were a minority group. And they did give them a little political representation, but not so much that they could actually have a say in what they wanted to. And there are two really great cases of like minority oppression. The first was 6,000 monasteries destroyed in Tibet, and the second is the destruction of like the Mongol population. Basically, 790,000 Mongols were persecuted, and 120,000 were maimed, and 22,000 were killed in a short time within Mongolia. And that was based off the idea of the Chinese Communist Party that they could give the minorities or that they would take away the minorities' ability to decide their own things. And lastly, with reference to religion, the People's Republic of China basically, as is the trend now with communism, tried to turn the state into atheist, basically. And eventually, communism became the religion that existed within China. So it basically took away all of like Christianity, Judaism. It was just communism now, and this basically was just emphasized by the propaganda earlier that I mentioned, with how Mao was like the ideal role model for China. And yeah, that's about it.
So the last single party state is Argentina. Um, and so for propaganda, Juan Perón censored 110 publications. And then a lot of the propaganda was for workers and unions because he was really for the working class and the laborers. And Eva Perón, his wife, was also a good symbol for women that was used a lot in propaganda. And then for women's rights, Eva Perón was an advocate, and so that was kind of her thing as first lady. And she increased freedoms for women and just more women's rights generally. And one of Juan Perón's goals was social justice, even though there was no concrete way to achieve this goal. And then for minorities, like I said before, women's rights increased. There was a lot of working class support. And then, like I said before, one of the main goals was social justice in Argentina. And there was no concrete way. And Juan Perón also wanted to close the gap between the classes because there was a really big divide between the working class and the really high elite class. And also, this was around the time of World War II, so Juan Perón showed sympathy for Jews and was the first Latin American country to acknowledge the state of Israel. And while there was a lot of anti-Semitism in Argentina at the time, Juan Perón himself was not an anti-Semite. even though he did actually help Nazi war criminals, but he also helped Jewish refugees. So that brings us to religion. That Catholic Church did not like Juan Perón, and Juan Perón himself was a Catholic until he was excommunicated by the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church also helped to overthrow Juan Perón and kind of end his reign. And like I said before, he wasn't personally anti-Semitic, but he did accept Nazi war criminals and help Axis powers. But he also helped Jewish refugees and was the sixth largest country, took in the sixth largest amount of Jewish refugees in the world. So those are our single-party state things for propaganda, women, minorities, and religious policies. Thanks for watching. Remember to comment below, hit that like button, hit us up with some comments. Remember to subscribe. Hope you enjoyed. We'll post another vlog on Thursday. Bye.